You're learning with 9 to 5 English. Business English for the workplace. Hi, Tim here with another 9 to 5 English lesson. In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to talk about extremes using superlatives such as best and worst. Business is a competition, and in competition, we are always talking about who or what is at the top or the bottom. Usually, this means comparing with adjectives. I mean, we're talking about how small something is or how successful someone is. Adding the idea of most to these adjectives is easy. If the adjective is short, we just add est to the end. So we say smallest, shortest, and cheapest. If the adjective is longer, then we use most, such as most successful or most interesting. Want to give this a try? Let's practice some examples of using most and best. Listen to each example, then repeat it yourself. Ready? Let's get started.
Our sales are usually highest in November and December.
Of all the interviewees, Caleb was the most impressive.
Nothing really compares to the taste of Beamer's coffee.
Amazon has far and away the biggest selection of books.
All right. We've just practiced using most and best. But you might have noticed another expression in those examples. If you want to say something is the best, you can say that nothing compares to it. That just means nothing is even close to as good as it. If New York is your absolute favorite city, for example, you can say, nothing compares to New York. So most and best are at one end of the scale. But what's at the other end? Well, that would be worst and least. I mean, maybe you think New York is the worst city in the world. If you're using an adjective to describe exactly what is so bad, then you can choose a negative adjective. For example, you can talk about the most terrible laptop, or you can use the word least, like saying someone is the least interesting person. How about some more practice? This time, we're talking about negative ideas using worst and least. Once again, repeat the examples after you hear them.
The second quarter of this year was our slowest ever.
There's nothing worse than high gas prices.
Wendy is the least qualified person for the job.
Their customer service is the absolute worst.
Great work! And did you notice 2 special expressions for saying something is the worst? One way is to say There's nothing worse than something. That means it's at the very bottom of the scale. And another is to say something is the absolute worst. That makes it sound pretty bad, doesn't it? Okay, we've practiced some of these expressions on their own. But how does all this sound in a conversation? Let's listen to a short dialogue between James and Nicola. James is asking Nicola about her new mobile phone.
Are you happy with your new mobile phone?
Yeah, nothing really compares to the latest Samsung.
You must notice a huge difference in speed.
I sure do. My old phone was the absolute worst for speed.
As you heard, Nicola thinks her new phone is the best, while her old phone was the worst. Now it's your turn to practice. We'll repeat the dialogue, but this time we're going to beep out the second speaker's words. You will have to say those parts yourself. Remember to start by saying that nothing compares to your new phone. Then you'll say how bad your old phone was for speed. Here we go.
Are you happy with your new mobile phone? You must notice a huge difference in speed.
All right, that about does it for this lesson. We've learned some great ways to talk about the best and worst of things. Tune in next time when you'll learn the best ways to talk about abilities. Until then, so long and happy learning. You're learning with 9 to 5 English. Business English for the workplace. Hi, Tim here with another 9 to 5 English lesson. In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to talk about abilities. There are lots of opportunities at work to talk about your abilities. And I don't just mean job interviews. That's an obvious one. But there's also work planning, project meetings, and just discussing who should do what on a daily basis. I mean, you're not going to ask the person who doesn't have the ability to type to prepare that big report, right? The simplest way to talk about basic abilities is using the words can and be able to. So, you might say, I can type 60 words a minute, or I am able to type 60 words a minute. It's that simple. How about a bit of practice talking about basic abilities? Let's try some examples. Listen to each sentence, then repeat it for yourself. Ready? Let's get started.
I can use the full Microsoft Office suite.
Harriet is able to speak Japanese fairly well.
I'm pretty good at presentations and public speaking.
As you just practiced, you can also say you are good at something, such as presenting or bookkeeping. That means you have the ability in that area. But what if you're really good at something? What if your ability isn't basic, but advanced? In that case, you have a few options. You can say you excel at something, which means you're not just good at it, but excellent at it. Or you can say that some ability is your greatest strength. That expression might be especially useful in a job interview. Let's give these expressions a try. This time, you're talking about things you're very good at. Once again, you're going to repeat the examples after you hear them.
I really excel at website design.
One of my greatest strengths is managing people.
I'm really confident in my sales abilities.
Did you notice that last example? If you say you're confident in some ability, it means you think you're very good at it. Confidence is important, so don't be afraid to express it. But being confident doesn't mean saying you can do everything. There are some abilities you don't have. And how can we talk about things we can't do? Well, that word can't is one way. It's just the opposite of can. And the opposite of be able to is unable to. Let's try these opposite expressions to talk about things you cannot do.
I can't understand this new software.
I'm unable to stay focused during long meetings.
I'm not very good at presentations.
Great work! You now have the ability to talk about things you can and cannot do. But wait a second. How can we talk about past abilities? I mean, what if you were good at something in the past, but can't do it anymore? The simplest way to talk about a past ability is with the word could, which is the past of can. For example, when I was in college, I could learn new words very easily. You can also say you used to be able to. That used to expression is for something that you did in the past, but not now. How about a little practice for talking about past abilities? Repeat the examples after you hear them.
When I lived in Spain, I could speak Spanish fluently.
Quinn was good at Photoshop when he first started here.
I used to be able to work 60 hours a week, but not anymore.
Remember when we talked about being good at something? Well, in the past, it's as easy as saying you were good at it. And it's often helpful to say when you could do something, as you just practiced. Okay. Now, how does talking about abilities sound in a conversation? Let's find out with a short dialogue between Shelley and Andrew. Shelley is asking Andrew about his language abilities.
So tell me, can you speak any foreign languages?
Yes, I'm pretty good at French and German.
I see. And do you know any Spanish?
No, I'm unable to speak Spanish.
As you heard, Andrew is pretty good at French and German, but he's unable to speak Spanish. Pretty simple, right? Now it's your turn to practice. We'll repeat the dialogue, but this time we're going to beep out the second speaker's words. You will have to say those parts yourself. Remember to start by saying that you're pretty good at 2 languages. Then you'll say you are unable to speak another language. Here we go.
So tell me, can you speak any foreign languages? I see. And do you know any Spanish?
All right. That about does it for this lesson. We've learned some great ways to talk about things you can or cannot do. Tune in next time when you'll learn how to ask for and give advice. Until then, so long and happy learning. You're learning with 9 to 5 English. Business English for the workplace. Hi, Tim here with another 9 to 5 English lesson. In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to ask for and give advice. Everybody needs a little help sometimes, and when you need help, you shouldn't be afraid to ask for advice. Maybe you ask a friend or colleague, or maybe you ask a boss or mentor. Whatever the case, I want to give you some good ways to get advice. One nice way is to ask for advice before you explain your problem. For example, you might say, "I was wondering if you could give me some advice." Or, if the person already understands the situation, you can just ask, "What do you think I should do?" Or maybe, "What do you think I should say?" How about a bit of practice on asking for advice? Let's try some examples. Listen to each question, then repeat it for yourself. Ready? Let's get started.
What do you think I should say to Joan?
If you were me, what would you do?
How would you suggest I respond to their request?
I was wondering if you could give me some advice.
Did you notice that question about if you were me? That's another great way to ask for advice, by asking them to imagine a situation. And when you're asking someone to imagine something, or when you are imagining, you need to use that word would. Now, I said that everyone asks for advice, right? Well, everyone also gives advice. Maybe you are that friend or colleague who is asked to make a suggestion. Let's start with giving gentle advice. By that, I mean, you're just suggesting possibilities, and you don't want someone to think you're telling them what they must do. The best way to do this is with a question. You can start with either "How about?" or "Why don't you?" Let's give this a try. Remember to repeat the examples after you hear them.
How about having a staff meeting about it?
Why don't you just ask him to explain?
If I were you, I would take the job.
You could always try calling tech support.
Nice work. And did you notice the sentence about "if I were you"? Remember, that's an imagined situation. So we use the word would, and you can also use the word could to say, here's one possibility. Saying "you could" is a gentle way to give advice, but sometimes you don't want to be gentle. Sometimes you have a very strong idea about what someone should do, and that's when you should use expressions like should, had better, and ought to. Let's try some more practice. This time, we're giving strong advice. Repeat the examples and try to notice the expressions that mean should.
You should talk to HR about your problem.
You'd better find someone to edit your work.
You really ought to get approval before spending the money.
You'd be crazy not to ask for a better deal.
That last example was a very strong way of giving advice. If you say someone's crazy not to do something, you mean they should definitely do it. All right, we've practiced some examples on asking for and giving advice. But how does this sound in a conversation? Let's listen to a dialogue between Justin and Brenda. Justin wants some advice about a job offer.
What do you think I should do about this job offer?
If I were you, I'd probably take the job.
Yeah, it sounds interesting, but the salary is pretty low.
Then you should try to negotiate a better deal.
Did you hear how that worked? Justin asked for advice, and Brenda made a couple of suggestions. Now it's your turn to practice. We'll repeat the dialogue, but this time we're going to beep out the second speaker's words. You will have to say those parts yourself. Remember to start by saying that you would take the job. Then you'll suggest negotiating a better deal. Here we go.
What do you think I should do about this job offer? Yeah, it sounds interesting, but the salary is pretty low.
All right, that about does it for this lesson. We've learned some great ways to ask for and give advice. Tune in next time to learn some more useful English expressions. Until then, so long and happy learning.